Today we're making cold process African black soap. Today we're going to make hot process African black soap. And these are all the ingredients and materials that we're going to use today. It's very important to find a place to make soap that is very spacious. You want to make sure that you're near a sink and also near a window or the outdoors. Right now, I'm in the kitchen. Okay, so I'm going to walk you through all of the ingredients I'm going to use. Today's ingredients are oils. This right here is the quick mix from Brambleberry, and I'm using it to save time and also to try out something that I haven't tried before, which is pre-mixed oils. You can also measure out your oils on your own. The next essential ingredient is sodium hydroxide, which I keep in a Ziploc bag. And this is from Essential Depot, and this is a key soap making ingredient. Along with this, I have the drum that I use to measure and mix the lye. And then I have a little container here where I store lye ahead of time. And of course we need distilled water, and there are some distilled ice cubes in here to cool down the mix. And in today's recipe I'm going to use I'm using Shea Terra Authentic African Black Soap. It's in a powder form that I'm going to add to the mix. The materials that I'm going to use to make soap are this crock pot. It has two settings, low and high, and an optional warm setting. This is a stick blender. Behind the stick blender is vinegar. I have it in a full bottle and in a spray bottle. I have a spatula here, as well as some teaspoons to measure out the additives I'll add in the end. And this orange thing here is a thermometer that all I have to do is hover it over the pot to know what temperature my soap is at. And this little bottle here is phenolphthalein that I use to check the pH of the soap when it's done. Alright, I have some extra towels here for anything that spills. And then I have a scale that measures in ounces and grams. On this side I have some colors and some fragrances. And then over here I have some gloves that I use to work with and some containers for the finished product, as well as a mold for the finished soap. And all of this is on a cut up grocery bag. I use this to line the table to help with cleanup. The first thing I've done here is I added a liner to the crock pot. This is also called a slow cooker liner. And I've turned the crock pot onto high. So the crock pot is on high, and because I melted the oils in the microwave earlier, they're already liquid. And so I'm going to wait for the crock pot to heat up, and I'll be back. I've poured in the entire quick mix, and so all of the oils are inside the crock pot. It's still heating up, so I'm going to give this about 15 minutes to fully heat up the oils. So while the oils are melting and the temperature is rising on the crock pot, I'm going to focus on measuring out the water and lye that's needed to make this into soap. So here is the distilled water that's ice cold. This is the lye, and this is the container where I measure these out. This recipe needs 4.7 ounces of lye, and so I'm measuring it on a scale. Okay. All right, 4.69 is close enough. All right, now I'm going to measure the distilled water. All right, I'm gonna tear out my container, and the container I use, I label it only sodium hydroxide, lye, and water solution. Because I mix lye inside of this and it's deadly, I don't want to make sure that there's no way anybody's going to mistake this as a regular pitcher to use. Anytime I'm working with lye and water, I always have vinegar handy. I have some here that is in a spray bottle, and then I also have vinegar that is in a full bottle. So the vinegar will neutralize lye because lye is a base and vinegar is an acid. So when we add them together, it's basic. All right, I will measure 11 ounces of water. Oops. Okay, 11:01 is close enough. All right, so now I'm going to mix together the lye and the water in this pitcher, and we're gonna go outside. Hey, stop. Oh, hey.
I touched the door, but
Oh, you're...
yeah, I cannot touch the under sink touch a paint.
Oh, can you come a different time? I'm using the kitchen right now.
Okay,
Yeah, I'm busy.
later or tomorrow?
Tomorrow.
Okay, that's
All
fine.
right, thank you. Okay, so now I'm going to mix together the water and the lye, which is the essential. Okay, so now I'm going to mix together the lye and the water, and this will heat up. This chemical reaction is necessary to make soap. And I'm outside because when you mix the two of them together, it produces some fumes that you really don't want to breathe in, but they do dissipate. And once they dissipate and once the mixture cools down, then we add it to our oils to make soap. So you might be able to hear it. It makes a hissing sound as it bubbles. Whew. Man, it smells pretty bad. Right now, I am wearing protective goggles. I also have on rubber gloves, and I'm wearing long sleeves and long pants. So if any of this gets on skin, it will burn through it. And this is a spatula that I only use for soap making. Okay, so it was cloudy before and it smelled really bad. Now it's mostly clear and the smell has dissipated. I looked a little closer into the mixture and I see that there are about 3 or 4 kernels of lye that have not dissolved yet. So I'm going to keep on mixing until all of it has dissolved completely. Okay, so with my stick blender, I am going to place it here into the oil. And then I am going to slowly start to pour the lye in the water mixture. Alright, now I'm going to pour the lye and the water mixture into the oils. Okay, I have all of that in there. I'm going to mix it around with my blender first. So that's 11 ounces of distilled water into 33 ounces of oils and 4.9 ounces of sodium hydroxide lye. So the saponification process is beginning. See how the texture is changing? This is what we want. Okay, so at this point, it has achieved trace. And trace is whenever you pick up the batter and you can see the outlines of it as you drop some of the product down. So I'm going to blast it a little bit more. Okay. All right, I'm going to now remove the stick blender. We're at a thick trace, and I am going to use my other spatula. I'm gonna mix this around, mix it around, get into all the corners. Make sure my bag is intact. Okay. And now we're going to let this cook. Alright, so I just lifted the lid and took the temperature, and it is 175 degrees right now. And it's only been on its own for about a minute. And minute by minute, hot process soap changes. So right now, I can see through the top glass, and the soap is pretty solid. It's inside of this pudding-like texture. I'm going to come back in a few minutes to show you the next phase. About 3 minutes have gone by since I left this alone, and we can see in the corner here, the part that's looking a little yellow, that is actually glycerin forming within the soap, and it is being created at the moment. So only 3 minutes in, and we get to see the glycerin start to develop as this batch of soap saphonifies. Ooh, this is so cool. So it's been another 2 minutes, so about 5-6 minutes total. And as you can see, the whole batch of soap, it's folding in on itself. More glycerin is forming. This batch of soap is cooking. And so this is what it looks like, and I think it's pretty cool. Oh, the joys of soap making. It's also important to never walk away from a batch of soap that you're making. Never walk away from a batch of soap, because it will volcano. It's actually about to try to volcano right now. Oh, 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 oh. All right. Picking that baby up. And I'm going to just gently mix this around. It looks like a souffle. Mashed potato-y in its texture. It's starting to smell a little bit like soap. Okay, mixing, mixing, mixing. Gonna cover the pot and let it continue doing its thing. Okay, so while this soap is cooking, I'm gonna keep an eye on it, and it's also a good time to start cleaning up. So the first thing that I like to do is neutralize anything that I don't need that has lye. So in this case, this jar, this container here has lye, as well as the red spatula that I use to mix the lye and water. And so what I do with this is I take my bottle of distilled vinegar and I pour it into this pitcher. I swish it around and pour it down the sink. And I also swish around the spatula. All right, so our soap is coming up for round 2. Okay, pouring in vinegar into this container, and then swishing that baby around, just getting it all over every part of it that interacted with the lye. Put the spatula in here, and now when I'm washing it in the sink, I have less to worry about. Okay, so it has been 14 minutes since the beginning of allowing the soap to cook, and it's looking very lovely. I've only stirred it one time so far, and it's continuing to bubble over itself. It's continuing to cook, and so I've taken the opportunity to clean up a little bit at my workstation, get the stuff out of the way that I don't need in front of me, and now I'm going to measure out what I need to make the soap an African black soap. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to measure out 2 tablespoons of this. So it's called Shea Terra Authentic African Black Soap. I've actually used this on my face. I just added it to water. I made a little paste with it and used it to cleanse my face before, and I liked it, so. Okay, so I'm measuring out 2 tablespoons per pound of oils. So since I have about 33 ounces, about 2 pounds of soap, I'm going to add 2 tablespoons. So I got 1, and I won't make the second one as full. It doesn't have to be exact, so that's not what I'm worried about right now. It's not like it's the lye or the water solution, which does need to be precise. Okay. So I'm going to add a little more. Okay, great. So this is 2 tablespoons of African black soap. And this is going to be an unscented soap. I was debating adding fragrance to this, but I thought, you know what, let's just let this one live. This will be the only additive that I'm going to include in this soap. And taking a look at our batch, it's been about 18 minutes and it's still cooking. Alright, so at this stage I am giving it another stir, and this has been cooking for 22 minutes by now. So I'm mixing it around. All gel inside of here. Okay, and then what I'm going to do next is I'm going to test and look at the pH of this. So I'm just going to put a little bit from the spatula onto this paper bag, and then I'm going to open up my little bottle of phenolphthalein, which I found on Amazon in a larger bottle, and I put them into smaller bottles, and I'm going to dump it on here. Okay, so I put some of this phenolphthalein on my sample, and as you can see here, it is pink. It's like this dark red-violet color. That means that this soap is still lye heavy, and so it's not ready to move forward with. In cold process soap, the pH is still high when you're making it. However, with hot process soap, the goal is to completely saponify the entire batch, and so this should come out clear. This probably needs about maybe another 20 minutes to cook. I'm going to keep an eye on it. This is what the soap looks like after 30 minutes. It's slowly coming up over itself. It's still cooking. I'm going to give it some more time before checking the pH again. Okay, and here we are. It's been 40 total minutes of cooking the soap, 20 minutes since the last time I did a stir, and there is like a river in the middle. Maybe it's glycerin, maybe it's some oil. It's folded in on itself again, and the color underneath is white. So I am going to go ahead and give this another stir and check the pH. So the consistency is very smooth. Quite gelatinous. To me, visually, it looks done, it smells done, but I'm still going to do a pH test. So I'm gonna pour some phenolphthalein on top, and yeah, it's running clear. So if you remember before, whenever I did this test on a different piece of the paper underneath here, it was completely pink. Now it's clear. It means that this soap is done. So I'm going to turn the heat off, and I'm going to pour in the African black soap directly into this and give it a really good mix. Mix, mix, mix. So this soap is awesome. I mean, you know, my parents, they're from West Africa, and so I'm very familiar with African black soap. I've never made it before. This will be my first time making it. Excited to use it when it's ready. I do know that in parts of West Africa, like the mixture of what this, you know, will be, it just depends on what natural ingredients are around. So in this project, or in this jar in particular, there is cocoa pod ash, plantain peel ash, and then there's some palm kernel oil in here and some camwood bark. So that's it. And you know, from using it on my face, I know to expect some chunks of wood and bark in here, and that's fine with me because this stuff is great for skin. Alright, so now I'm going to take my molds here. And this right here is a new paper mold that I'm trying out for my classes, where I teach hot process and cold process soap making. Alright, done. All right, and then I'm gonna glop some of this into my old containers, which were these really cool plastics. And I like these because when it's done, it's so large that my students can just cut it in half and have 2 bars of soap around. All right, and then I have the remainder, so I have a large container for the rest of this to go into. And then I also have a divider that won't quite fit this, but I'll make it work. So I'm gonna plop this in here. Yeah, this is looking so beautiful. Okay. All right, so I still have plenty of soap left in here and around this bag. So I'm gonna put the rest of it into my other new container. And this is just like gel. And so I used a bag. I've done this before a few times. Whenever I know it's going to be a day like today where I'm just in the zone and want to keep on making as much soap as I can. This way I don't have to wait for the crock pot to cool down and wash it and wait for a whole hour in between. I can just jump right in. And then, throughout the process, I think the only downside would be, if you're new to this, you might not completely, ensure that all of that lye and oil is mixed. So there's a possibility that you could have a corner that is heavy with lye. I have not had that personally happen to me, but it seems likely it could happen. Okay. And I think I got all, let me just get a little bit of that hot soap left. And as I mentioned, I did turn this off a few minutes ago, but it's still pretty hot. Just gonna glob that on top. And yay. All right. So as we can see, I have made enough soap to fill about half of this 8-inch mold. And then all of this plastic container here, I believe it holds 8 ounces. I think these also hold 8 ounces too. So I'm gonna have 1, 2, 3, possibly 4, 5, 6, 7, say about 8 bars of soap that I'm making out of this recipe of African black soap. And because we cook the soap all the way to completion, it is technically ready to use. However, I always like to be on the safe side with this, and I will let this cure. So I'll let it harden. Once it's hard, perhaps by tomorrow, I'll take it, put it on a wire rack in the linen closet, and just let this cool down, let the water evaporate from it, let it get hard, and then I won't use it or give it away to any of my friends or family for at least 4 weeks. Just to be on the safe side. But I've heard people use this soap as quickly as, 2-3 days, if not like a week from making it. So just be careful and be smart about it. You don't want to get yourself hurt. And this is how African black soap is made.